Calorie bros will tell you intermittent fasting's bullshit and it's just calorie deficit. Is that true, or are there other benefits? So many people ask me, what do I do when I get up and go to the gym at 6 a.m? Like, what should I eat? My response is just like, well, why would you eat? You don't need the energy, but people think they do.
Truth is, across all of this conversation, fasting is easier for men. Men manage skipping breakfast a lot easier than women do. Please, let's try not to treat women like men. We are very different.
Yeah.
People enter it, go a bit too hard, try things that are quite extreme, like water fasting or pushing beyond that 24-hour period.
I went from doing 36-hour hardcore water-only fasts. I just couldn't function at work. Lost almost probably too much weight, and I probably wasn't eating quite enough food, so felt weak at times. Stop eating early is really important.
Quite often people's lifestyle doesn't allow them to stop their dinner till sort of 8 o'clock, and I really do encourage a lot of people to work out how they can move their dinner earlier, particularly for women where delaying breakfast is not a particularly beneficial option.
So what time do you eat dinner? Welcome back to the Unprocessed Truth, and this week we are taking on a big topic I know so many of you are asking about: intermittent fasting. Is it legit? Does it really work? Are there any benefits beyond just calorie restriction? What are the common pitfalls we need to avoid, and how do we need to do it properly? I'm joined by Natalie Louise Burrows, who's a nutritionist and the clinical director at Integral Wellness. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
You are an intermittent faster yourself, I believe.
Intuitively so, yes.
Intuitively so. So you're going to get into this in a bit more experience, but I'll start with my experience of intermittent fasting, because like a lot of people who's into their health and wellness, probably, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, it became trendy and I started doing it. I jumped on the bandwagon and I went from doing, 36-hour hardcore water-only fasts to then more intermittent fasting. And the 36-hour thing, I just couldn't function at work. Didn't go well with my work-life balance at all. So I kind of stopped that, went to intermittent and found a lot of success. Lost almost probably too much weight. Mm-hmm. Didn't enjoy that side of it. And I probably wasn't eating quite enough food, so felt weak at times. And I also played football, so I didn't think it was necessarily great for my performance, interestingly. And then I'd say I've now got to a bit more of a space with it where it's more intuitive, like you say. So if I'm traveling up to London, I don't really want to eat breakfast at 5 a.m. when I wake up. It's a bit weird. So then I just get on the train, water only or black coffee, and then I won't have breakfast till I get to London, and that might be 10:30, 11. So I've not fully gone the hardcore intermittent fasting till 1 or 2 in the afternoon, but I've just delayed my breakfast essentially. And that, I think, works for my body. I feel good on that. But what's your experience? What are you doing with intermittent fasting at the moment? And give us a bit of the background.
Yeah, of course. So I think your experience is probably quite common of how people enter it, go a bit too hard, try things that are quite extreme, like water fasting or pushing beyond that 24-hour period, and then coming back to finding something that works better with your lifestyle is where I hope everyone ends up getting to. And my experience is probably very similar. I was off that craze of sort of juice fasting and going for sort of 1 to 2 weeks of only drinking green juice and water, trying to sort of push myself way too far, trying to get myself through to dinner without any meals. And that didn't work for me at all. And I think back then when I did it, potentially over a decade ago now, we didn't have the level of knowledge that we have on fasting now, and we didn't have the appreciation for how men and women operate differently in this space and why certain people might find this easier than others. And I think that's what we're at least seeing coming out of the research. And that's what I hope we can start to then personalize it a little bit. So for the individual thinking that fasting, or whether we call it intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating, we're all sort of skirting around a similar idea of the fact that we won't eat anything across a certain window of time, and then we will keep our feeding window to 8 or 10 or 12 hours, however that looks. That is for people to then find their own mojo with and find what works for them. And that's really what I found. I found that I don't have to think about it anymore. I found that for me, what was important is making sure I gave a really good window overnight so that I wasn't eating on the cusp of going to bed. And this is such a common thing that I recommend for people. I was actually able to digest my food while I'm still awake in the evening. then I go to sleep. I have a good 8 hours sleep. I wake up in the morning. I'm able to start getting ready for my day. And then I consider having breakfast. And that, for most people, is a really good place to start, is that overnight fast, and then start thinking about how that might be adopted in the day as well.
Because I guess we're trained into this world of like, we wake up, we eat breakfast. And I know so many people ask me, like, what do I do when I get up and go to the gym at 6 a.m? Like, what should I be eating before the gym? And my response is just like, well, why would you eat? It's like a bit early and you don't need the energy, but people think they do. So they're like wolfing down some porridge and then going to the gym at 6 a.m. Like, why do we do that?
It's quite different for everybody that's individual. And I think it's going to depend on where you start on. So if we talk about the gym, but if we also talk about how that might migrate into what somebody's day might look like. So for the gym, for men, they might actually find that training they can manage fasted, and that's not going to be a problem for them. Truth is, across all of this conversation, fasting is easier for men. Men manage skipping breakfast a lot easier than women do.
Okay.
And so please, let's try not to treat women like men, and let's try not to put men in women's brackets either. We are very different.
Yeah.
So men might be able to go to the gym fasted and be fine. Maybe you've got a little bit of BCAAs or creatine in your water, and you find that that works for you. Great. For women, particularly women as they're moving through more of their sort of perimenopause, menopausal years, having a little something before you go to the gym is going to be quite beneficial. And then actually, if we were to look at elders, also classed as geriatrics, but I think elders is much kinder.
Nicer term.
Elders is polite. They might also find, when thinking about bone density and sarcopenia, muscle health, that also making sure they take something on before going to the gym means that they're not breaking down muscle for the energy, and they really are using the fuel they're given.
Yeah.
So different stages of life, different sexes matter. So for women, if women are thinking, okay, well, that's me, perimenopause, menopause, what am I eating? Then we want to be thinking about the fact you don't need to eat a meal. You just need to eat a small something. A lot of people don't want much at that point in the morning. So whether they're going to do something like having a very small protein shake, so just water and a little bit of protein powder, doesn't have to be the full volume you'd normally have, but just a little something to get you going. Maybe it's a couple of bites of a banana and a little bit of peanut butter. It can be that small. It doesn't have to be your official breakfast, but it just means you're not going on nothing.
Yeah.
And that we're seeing that in evidence to be quite supportive.
But you're saying you intermittent fast, then you're a woman.
I am.
So how do you manage it in a way that you can get the benefits as being a woman?
Yeah. So intermittent fasting for me is very different if I'm heading to the gym first thing. I actually have the joy of usually getting to the gym at around 11, which is also quite a beneficial time. Now, I have the luxury of the fact that I can manage my diary to do that on the days that I want to go to the gym, or I go at a weekend. 11 o'clock is a really nice time where actually, from a cortisol perspective, cortisol is really playing on our side. As a quick way of understanding what that might look like, if you're unwell, you wake up, feel really awful in the morning. By about 11 o'clock, you're sort of going, oh, actually, I think I'm okay. And then you start crashing again at sort of 3, 4 in the afternoon. And that's that sort of moving with the cortisol wave of its natural peak and trough in the day. So I tend to try and go with that wave at the gym if I can as well at about 11 o'clock. And by then, I've had my breakfast, I've digested it well, and I can go. If I was going to go first thing in the morning, I would eat something very small. But actually, if I look at intermittent fasting in general for me, I am thinking not only about that overnight fast, which, as I say, I really encourage everyone to think about eating dinner, digesting properly, and then going to bed.
The benefit on your sleep is so fundamental, and sleep is so important to your overall health that actually stop eating early is really important, even though it's really not talked about in intermittent fasting.
No, and I think that's really key. Quite often, people's lifestyle doesn't allow them to stop their dinner till sort of 8 o'clock. And actually, it would be quite key to try and work on that. And I really do encourage a lot of people to work out how they can move their dinner earlier, particularly for women where delaying breakfast is not a particularly beneficial option.
Yeah.
So having breakfast within 1 to 2 hours of waking is really where we should be trying to aim for women. But that then means that if you want to reduce your eating window, you're going to have to bring dinner earlier.
So what time do you eat dinner?
Well, aiming for around 6.
Okay.
And that does feel quite early compared to the days when I used to have to commute all the time. And actually, even then, me and my husband have had to work quite hard at making sure we prioritise coming home and prioritise eating straight away, even if maybe my laptop needs to be picked up again at some point. it does take a bit of a shift to do that, but the benefits are huge. We feel so much better, feel much more digested. We actually also sit down and spend more time to each other rather than, oh gosh, it's 8, 9 o'clock and I've got to rush some dinner and then I'm rushing to go to bed. And that's not the mood you should be in at that time of night. And then other side, as I say, give it 1 to 2 hours as you're waking up to then think about eating food. If you're not hungry, as a woman, I'd be questioning whether we have got some dysregulated nervous system, sort of, are we working on a bit of a stress response and that's reducing our appetite? I definitely think we need to have quite an honest conversation with ourselves about that. And then during the day, where I also think it's really key, is to think about not eating in between meals. And that's also a type of fast that people seem to ignore. So we often tend to go from being a bit of a grazer to suddenly trying to do this time restricted eating, and the extreme or the distance between the two can actually make us feel quite groggy. And that's why for me, if you can get that nighttime fast in 12 hours, 14 hours, get comfortable with that, and then actually start making sure that you go from breakfast to lunch and lunch to dinner with a decent 4 to 5 hours or whatever that looks like in between, your body's really starting to adapt to time without food in a really comfortable, manageable way. If you're doing time restricted eating, but within that 8-hour window, you're grazing, we're not really getting anywhere. And this is really cool when we think about metabolic flexibility. If we want to latch on to some of those real benefits of fasting, so many people will do it for weight loss. But actually, do we want to latch on to not just thinking about weight, but also thinking about the deeper health benefits?
Well, so the calorie bros will tell you intermittent fasting's bullshit and it's just calorie deficit. Is that true, or are there other benefits?
There are definitely other benefits to fasting. I think the idea that if you were to restrict your calories into a calorie deficit, but graze all day, might you lose weight? Yes, if we look at biochemistry from a food perspective, there's some evidence that you might still lose weight. But from my perspective, this isn't just about weight loss. This is about gaining greater health. So I'm looking at, well, what could we do to also make sure you're metabolically healthier? And gaining more metabolic flexibility through making sure you're not grazing all day, even if it is in a calorie deficit, even if it is in a time restricted eating, will have greater benefit from you. And I've had personal experience with that. When I was working in corporate, I would restrict my calories. I would use an app to track everything I was eating, but I would just graze continuously. And I am miles better and healthier now, being much more in tune with my eating window and eating 3 meals a day or sometimes 2 meals a day, not grazing and not tracking a single thing that I eat, but focusing on nutrients. So I'm not saying that there is no merit in what we appreciate about energy out, but there's much more merit in understanding proper metabolic health. And also really core to all of this is also nutrient sufficiency in the body as well. And that's something I worry people go into fasting with low nutrient status, and then they restrict nutrients further through trying to fast for maybe, hopefully, weight loss benefits. I think we've just got to think bigger and we've got to care for our bodies in a different way.
Interesting.
We can still use the same approach where we fast, but can we do it where actually we're trying to reach metabolic flexibility, not just trying to cut down on calories? And can we do it with a longer sight in mind rather than just, can I fit into a dress in the next month?
Well, and you do it in a way that protects your sleep and makes sure you're optimizing your sleep, which is fundamental. So what are some of the other things people should, integrate into their fasting if they're thinking about it? Like, what about electrolytes? What about other hacks of timing that can make it easier? Because it is essentially a stress on the body, right?
Yeah, and it really can be. And I think that's also something really important to point out, that if you are experiencing a lot of stress in life, then starting to restrict food into certain windows is probably not the one for you. That's not your low-hanging fruit. Pick a different health goal to work towards, probably managing your stress a bit better or getting enough sleep and enough hydration while you are very stressed. Because when we're stressed, we lose a lot more electrolytes, we rinse our hydration a lot quicker, hence everything begins to dry out. We often feel it in our mouth a lot more. So that would be then your goal. Don't start trying to restrict nutrition when that's happening in your body, because your adrenals are just not going to be keen on you doing that. I guess if you're looking at then starting to manage some of these windows with some of the tips that we've shared today, then definitely think about your hydration. Water can be taken in at any point of the day and doesn't disrupt the fast. Electrolytes, a good electrolyte balance can be really helpful. I know a lot of people are filtering their water now, understanding whether you're filtering out all the minerals and you need to re-add them back in, really appreciate what you're doing. And actually even sometimes just adding very minimal amount of electrolytes to people's water can do the world of difference for them. So it might be something that's worth trying, titrating with and listening in on to how that feels.
Yeah, I always have to do black coffee or green tea or something like a herbal tea, because otherwise I'm just done. Like I need something to keep me going, because I don't stop. Like I'm not just having a nice fast at home, chilling out on the weekend. I'm like at work, running around London or doing something. So you can have teas, coffees, no issues.
Yeah, as long as there's no milk.
Yeah.
So black tea, black coffee, herbal tea, not a problem. The caffeine isn't a challenge with breaking fast from what I understand. There is some question around things like lemon water, whether that potentially takes you out of ketosis for a short period of time.
Interesting.
But I think the reason we're not quite settling on whether this is a yes or a no is because there's argument to say you enter back into ketosis quite quickly. And I think that's where
depends
the
how
nuance
much lemon you
sits.
squeeze in your water as well.
Yeah. I mean, do I personally recommend everyone drink lemon and hot water first thing in the morning? I'm not really sure what the argument is for doing that. I don't particularly agree with this idea that you're helping to flush through the body. I just think our body's a bit smarter than the fact it needs lemon water to be helped. And
But if you like the taste and you're hydrating first thing in the morning, crack on.
if that's just what you genuinely enjoy, of course, crack on. Please make sure you protect your teeth. Please don't swill things around your mouth, but that goes for most things that we drink and we eat. Don't swill things around your mouth. And with anything, whether it's a black tea, a black coffee, a lemon water, I think dentists tend to recommend you give it a good half an hour before or after you brush your teeth.
Yes.
Because of sort of abrasing and doing that as well. So yeah, just a couple of things to remember. But if we're adding things like milks or sugars or collagens or things like that to our teas or coffees, that will then break the fast. So we really are looking for quite plain versions.
Yeah. And so we've got to talk about autophagy. Glad I said that right. It's a complicated word. But that's obviously one of the benefits that's talked about a lot of why you would bother doing fasting beyond just weight loss and calorie deficit and whatever else you're doing it for. What is it real? Can you explain what it is?
Yeah, it is real. It's a really natural process to happen in the body, whether it's autophagy, people potato. I don't know which one it is, but that process is a very natural biochemical process that should take place within our bodies. So cells should develop and live and thrive and then die, recycle and clear out the body. That's all very natural. And there's nothing to be worried about. There was such interesting research in fasting for its benefits on longevity. Did it actually support the body in clearing out these dying and, clear out, recycle these dying cells quicker? And there's been some really positive evidence to say that it can help that along. And I think if we're just to take that into something that's quite sort of easy to understand and to gain a bit of sensibleness around it, if you give the body periods of rest where it's not having to focus on digestion, which is a massive effort for the body to break down food. It's got to go from mouth to south. That's the whole digestive process. It's got to engage the gallbladder, the pancreas, the liver. There's a lot going on there. If you give the body periods of rest, you give it an opportunity to utilize the fuel that it's got. That helps with metabolic flexibility, but that also helps with cells being able to use and clear as the functions that they're meant to be doing.
Yeah.
So the science in this, I think, is really interesting. And definitely those who are specializing in longevity get really excited about this aspect. And I think for some people working on, and this is not my area at all, but for some people working in areas like cancer and that, they find it quite favorable to support those sorts of processes. So it's definitely one to
So it doesn't happen if you don't intermittent fast? Or
it will
does?
happen anyway. The body will naturally be doing that anyway, because that's a very natural process to go through. What we see is a slight improvement in the support of your body in enabling that natural process. It's the same as the fact the body should naturally be able to switch between fuels, using glucose versus using fat. But if we continually snack and graze, the body doesn't need to switch into fat burning mode because it's got easy access glucose.
Yeah, all the time.
So if you allow these fasts to take place overnight between meals, you naturally reduce, you've processed your food, you've used up all that glucose in that meal. Now your body, if it wants energy, needs to tap into the fat that is available within storage. Unless you give the body that opportunity,
That's
it won't
what
do
everyone
it.
wants, to burn fat, right?
Absolutely. You want to burn it, one, because a lot of people want an aesthetic, external look. Absolutely. There's some health benefits to that too. But we want to do it as well because it does enable really great metabolic health. So we should really all be able to walk around town without snacks in our bags and without worrying about where our next meal is going to come from.
It's an interesting concept about resting, letting the body rest to allow it to do these processes, because essentially we think of rest as good. We get tired, we work hard, and then we sit in front of Netflix and watch something with some popcorn or some crisps or whatever. And actually that's not rest for our body, is based on what you're saying, because it's got to process and digest all that food.
Yes, there's certain areas of your body that will be resting in that moment.
But not
So
others.
your mind might be resting. I mean,
Yeah.
your body never rests technically, does it? Because your heart's always pumping, your liver's always working, your kidneys are always functioning. So the body actually never technically ever rests. But I guess when we're thinking about resting at the weekend, we're probably thinking about more nervous system rest. But it is worth thinking about, is your nervous system getting true rest? Because potentially if we are forcing a fast, then actually
It's
the
not that
adrenals
helpful.
are not going to be enjoying that. And I think for me, the biggest thing, if somebody's wondering if they're ready to enter some of this, is not only to think about starting really sensibly around that nighttime fast. Where can I move dinner to? Where can I move breakfast to create an evening fast? And then thinking about in between meals, but actually is to also think about, where's my health today? Am I actually nutritionally complete? Is my status of nutrition good? Have I got good amounts of electrolytes in my body, good vitamins and minerals? Or have I really not been looking after myself particularly well recently, not eating particularly well? And therefore, my body's going to be starting off under par. Let's get ourselves up to a good nutritionally complete state. Let's actually at least help our nutritional status. And then let's allow ourselves to move into being a bit more flexible, being fasted at certain periods. I worry about this depletion on top of depletion.
Yeah, well, and it's also about take it easy and start with what works for you and your schedule. So if you're going to start with something, don't go hardcore 36-hour fast. Maybe just move your dinner from 8 p.m. to 6 p.m. Start
Absolutely.
there and see what difference it
Start
makes.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do one thing.
One thing, really simple.
Yeah. And I think that's what the man who started a lot of this conversation, Dr. Michael Mosley, named his podcast, wasn't it? One thing.
Yeah.
Just do one thing.
Just do
So I
one
think we
thing,
can very
just
much
do.
take that for this.
Exactly. And, you know, I think the other thing I'd take away from this conversation is like listening to your body 100%. And doing what works for you, because I've tried to be hardcore and not eat anything during a full day of work, and that just does not work because my body's busy and stressed and using its brain all day, so it needs some fuel probably. But then actually maybe skipping breakfast for me, because I'm a guy, works, and that just works naturally better with my body. And I eat dinner early. I eat dinner at about 6 o'clock as well, because I've got kids.
Yeah.
I don't like it if I work late and then eat late. It doesn't feel good in my body, then how I sleep and everything else. So what about all these confusing terms people throw around? The 5-2 diet, the 8-16, like what does it all mean?
Yeah, it's a good question. And really, it's just multiple different words for the same sort of thing. It's about trying to help somebody find their rhythm for fasting. So the 16-8 is taking the 24-hour that we have in the day, splitting it into 16 hours of fasting and 8 hours of an eating window. And there's different variations like that. I tend to say to people, cut it down the middle and start there.
Yeah.
Do 12-12, then maybe go to 14-10 and work your way through. Don't just launch from a grazer into 16-8.
Makes sense.
5-2 is obviously what Michael Mosley wrote a lot about, and that's thinking about taking the week. So if you find working on a day-to-day basis isn't right for you, you might find actually working across a week works easier. So you take 2 days of the week where you would limit your calorie restriction to 800 calories. And then the other days you would keep it within what would be a more natural maintenance calories. What people have got to try not to do there is binge and completely swing the other way on those. But that's really what everyone's got to be cautious of when it comes to restricted eating. And I would say that anything around time restricted eating has to come with a really healthy approach to it. And it has to come from a point where your body is ready to take it on. So this just goes back to start low and slow and steady.
And do what works for you. So adapt the plan to how it fits best into your lifestyle and listen to your body, essentially.
Yeah. Don't keep slogging it. If it feels wrong, if it's not working, if you're miserable, stop. Rethink. You've got to tune in and listen.
Good advice. Okay, so last quick fire questions for all the naysayers who say intermittent fasting doesn't work. What would you say to them?
Well, one, doesn't work on what? If it's not, doesn't work on weight loss, I'd say that's potentially because we are still over consuming. I'd also say potentially of weight loss, if you're still grazing throughout those 8-hour window, then we've got a bit more of a metabolic flexibility issue. So I think we've got nutrient deficiencies to consider, metabolic flexibility, quality of sleep, good hydration, and your stress levels, as well as the fact of what food you're actually eating.
So there's nuance in it.
Always
basically.
nuance to it.
Always nuance.
Yeah.
And then, okay, lastly, if people are going to take away one thing from this conversation and they want to start intermittent fasting, what would your advice to them be?
Please do start with thinking about that overnight window. When you're going to sleep, your body should be fasted, but not just fasted for the 8 hours that your head is lying on that pillow.
Yeah.
You should be eating dinner and being awake for a good 2-3 hours after dinner, not grazing, not snacking, not needing anything, but just digesting. You should also be able to wake up and have a good hour or so before you're needing to eat something or before you encourage your body to start eating something. Start there and work from there. And then my next step would be get good 3 solid meals in a day, but fast in between your meals. And if that's your starting point, that for some people can be life-changing without needing to go any further.
Take it low and slow. Take it easy, step by step. No late night snacking in the cupboard.
Please, yes.
Not a good idea.
And if you have to put all that in the bin, it's not a bother. It's not a waste of food when it's things that don't have great nutritional value for you anyway. Or drop it off at a food bank. You know, there's really easy ways of starting to clear our cupboards if we're wanting to make these changes.
Or you just eat it all and then don't buy it again.
I'll let you
just
say
have
that
one
advice.
last binge and then don't buy it again. But that's my trick. I just don't buy it. So it's never in my cupboard. So I never eat it. And it does work for me. Thank you. That was really interesting. A short, sharp episode on what intermittent fasting is and why people might want to try it and how they want to adapt it to their life so it can actually be beneficial to them. But lastly, as we always ask everyone, what does health mean to you, Natalie?
Health means to me making the most of the life that I've got. If there's one chance for me to enjoy this life, I want to do it in the healthiest way possible. And I want to wake up and go to bed feeling good. If life feels like a slog, my health isn't in the right place. So it becomes the focus so that I can live my life to the greatest potential and have the most fun.
Amazing. What a great way to end the podcast. That is so simple. We just want to feel good and have a good time.
Absolutely.
Thank you for coming on, Natalie.
Thank you for having me.